You're listening to Just Another Solar podcast, bringing you the latest from the solar industry. This episode is proudly sponsored by Catch Power. Are you still wasting time on site trying to make complex systems work? Struggling with export limits, max demand thresholds, EV control, or multi-brand headaches? Catch Control is your answer. A 2-pole wide Aussie-made energy meter that does the thinking for you. Export limiting, load control, battery and EV integration, DNSP compliance, all sorted. For more information, please visit our website, catchpower.com.au.
Right, welcome back to Just Another Solar podcast with Luke Beattie. That's me, Karl Jensen. Whereabouts are you now, Karl?
I'm in sunny Sydney. I didn't quite make it to Nigel. Got held up in ridiculous roadworks traffic, but the intention was good. I'm just in a car park.
I had beers on ice for you, mate. We were ready for you.
G'day, Jess MacPherson.
Hey, mate, how you doing? Feels like there's not enough time to scratch yourself at the moment, is there?
Well, especially for you as a solar retailer. How's your week been so far?
Has the week been? I suppose it has. No, a good problem to have. Certainly don't want to complain too much about it. Lots of happy customers, lots of batteries going out the door. We're on the way down on that coaster, aren't we?
And industry legend Nigel Morris. How are you, Nige?
Great. Thanks, mate. G'day, team. Good to be back again. Hell of a week here in Sydney. We had a polar bomb land on us and, 14, 15-foot swell out the front here. So it was, we missed the worst of it. But, boy, some people really copped it. So hope everyone's okay out there.
Yes, and after all the build-up, we finally started the battery scheme. So it seems like it's taken forever for this to start. There's a flurry of activity. All of the online channels are just full of emotional, stressed, busy people. Seems to be more questions than answers in some regards. But what are you guys seeing out there at the moment?
Oh, boy, we're all going to have a view, but I'll drop one in straight off the bat if that's okay, because I was at the Solar Juice function last night. They held their Energy Never Sleeps thing, and Bowen was there. Gave a great little speech, actually, which was great, and got a couple of good, well-deserved rounds of applause. And he mentioned he'd called the Clean Energy Regulator to check in before the event to find out where things are up to after 2 days since B-Day, spelled B-I-D-E-T, according to some people. But since B-Day, according to Minister Bowen last night, 40 megawatt hours went in, which is pretty bloody impressive in 2 days flat. And they're just the systems that were connected up and got through the entire process and everything else. And no doubt that's going to ramp up and accelerate. So, yeah, it's happening.
As the backlog gets in there, Jimmy, Nige, where everyone has got these pre-ready to go systems. Yeah.
What do we call them that? We call them that 4,000 systems?
No, it depends how you measure it, but he also mentioned the average system size was 16 kilowatt hours. So based on that, it's a few hundred. Probably call it 500, including a few small ones and a few big ones.
And there were some issues as well, particularly with SIG energy systems. After the scheme was announced, the minister said that you can install the systems but not connect them and commission them. But SIG Energy had a software lock. So we had people out there installing SIG Energy batteries with the software lock. And then there was a memo, or it was stated explicitly, that even if there's a software lock, it'd still be considered to have been installed before the 1st of July. And it's put in jeopardy some of those rebates for systems that have been installed beforehand.
There was quite a lot of talk about that last night. I met a couple of very gloomy folks who clearly didn't see that memo come out on Friday, and then others who had been paying very, very careful attention to that detail and had made sure that they did their installs the correct way and spoke with their customers. So, yeah, it's a bit of a mixed bag, I think.
And then systems were pre-sold, and there's been some questions, a bit of clarification sought from the Clean Energy Regulator, because potentially installing multiple stacks of batteries are considered multiple batteries. Therefore, you wouldn't be eligible for the rebate on all of them. That was one issue. And there was another issue around adding modules to existing systems. What's going on there, Jess?
Oh, the module thing is quite the debacle because, so somebody has say, I'm just going to use SunGrow as the example. If they had a stack and they wanted to add
another module or two onto it, those modules aren't deemed eligible because the modules themselves aren't individually CEC approved, which would be the case for insert your brand name here pretty well across the board, as I understand it. And, it's just, it really feels like punishing people who are trying to get their worth of this rebate. As I understand it, not really clarity as of this moment. There are some people talking about exemptions, like the Tesla expansion pack, for example, is potentially getting an exemption or might be otherwise classified. But end of the day, it seems the only safe path is to try and convince your customer to do a separate stack, which puts you in an awkward position of asking for more money at the last minute. And nobody wants to be doing that to their customers.
There was a lot of emotion on some of the WhatsApp groups around this issue over the last 24 hours, wasn't there? A lot of confusion. So I think there's still some detail to be worked through, right?
I've said it before and I'll say it again, Nigel. There's no rush, mate. So everybody who's rushed in here's done a bit of a slip and fall. Just wonder who's going to be the Stephen Bradbury of the whole show.
Can't blame people for being excited.
The Stephen Battery.
It could be worse, though. You could be based in WA, where on the 1st of July, the state scheme also went live, which is even more complex and onerous and more layers. And Nigel, I really liked your post, which likened it to solving the Da Vinci Code.
Oh, look, I woke up at 4:00 in the morning as courtesy of the big storm that we had, and I started thinking about my day and thinking about all the conversations I was having with people and all the things that installers and owners have to consider when they're trying to design and sell and install. And I had a chat with one guy in particular who shall remain unnamed to explain the complexities in just training his sales team to understand every combination and permutation, and it felt like the Da Vinci Code. So I waxed lyric. It's a horribly long read. I don't know how many words are in it, but Karl,
it was a lot. I needed a beer to finish it.
It's midway.
Got a bit out of hand. That was a brain dump and a half. It just highlights how complicated it is, right?
And WA is the worst of all. Oh, my God.
Let me simplify one thing. When you AC couple batteries in WA under the state scheme, the whole system must comply to the new requirements, which is around that CSIP 1.3 and having the battery controls. So it means if you've got a 10-year-old system, the company's come in and sold an AC couple battery, all of the system must be controllable. And that's become problematic where you have companies, I know of at least 3 companies that are stocked to the gunnels with alpha batteries that they're pre-sold, and they're in a position where they can't install them. Now, whether that's your product preference or not is irrelevant. It's companies that did the right thing. They said, we want to secure stock, we'll put it on the shelf. And now they're in a position where there's going to be cash flow issues due to having products that can't be installed. And it wasn't really clear before the scheme started that this would be the case.
I spent a huge amount of time on this issue this week and actually read through Western Power's rules and regulations and connection guidelines and spun my wheels and went from link to link to link to link to link on all the various different websites trying to actually just get a really clear answer on it. And it is mind-bogglingly complex and lacking in important detail. But over the course of the weekend, as a consequence of a call I had this afternoon with some people who are very deep in this, who shall also remain unnamed, and the work that we're obviously doing at Catch, we have sort of got our head around it now. And, what is kind of cool, but also kind of Da Vinci-ish, is that, we've got CSIP everywhere else, and it basically does backstop and it does dynamic, and in Queensland it does a bit of EV control, but that's pretty much it. And what Western Australia has done is basically tweaked the CSIP standard to CSIP 1.3 and said, we're just going to include VPP in that. So now to be CSIP compliant, like we are in Victoria or Queensland or South Australia or anywhere else, if you want to do that in WA, you also have to have this very unique VPP capability. And of course, in WA, there are also third parties who interact with that VPP. So to try and make every combination and permutation work on a new system that is compliant, plus reach in, as you said, Luke, reach into the existing inverter that might already be on the site and orchestrate that as well. Man, our guys have literally burnt the midnight oil to try and work out how we're going to achieve that. The good news is they had a moment the other day and the boss rang me we spoke last night at the event. He said, he's cracked it. Don't worry. It'll be fine.
I can't even imagine the sheer amount of work that battery manufacturers have to go into to cater to a very small part of the Australian market. You know, these huge international companies, we saw it when we started the flexible export stuff here, which is, I guess, ongoing. And, you know, just the absolute monumental amount of work, how much stuff you have to explain to a customer just because they want to jump in on some rebates it's a lot of work. And, you know, once you start cutting some corners, it's a slippery slope. You want people to understand what they're getting and what's going to happen. Yeah, big job.
I'll wave the flag for the DC coupled. If I have a look at, say, a 6.6 kilowatt system, I lose about 250 kilowatt hours a year to the inverter loss. And if I store 4,000 kilowatt hours in, say, my 10 kilowatt battery that I'm cycling every day, or a portion of my 15 kilowatt hour battery, I'm setting fire to 400 kilowatt hours worth of energy. So I've more than doubled the losses from the panel to the customer's house. That's significant. And when you take out a couple of those DC to AC to DC steps, the losses are much, much less. So if we can go from panel to battery and then battery to grid, the losses are sort of 4% as opposed to 14%. You know, it's a lot. I think DC coupled we've ended up that way by some kind of orchestrated chaos, then maybe it's not a bad thing.
I rely on you for the detailed theoretical and mathematical analysis that you bring to this podcast, Karl, and it's always exceptional. I rang you the other day and complimented you after hearing you bang on another podcast, actually. You're exactly right, but surely the real world says, sure, but if I've got an existing system, I don't want to ditch that inverter. I don't want to have to throw that out with the bathwater and add another one because I'm going to gain a few percent in efficiency. And by the way, slapping an AC coupled system on the side of an existing system is quick and simple and pretty economical. So surely the real world is going to trump a lot of this. And from what I'm seeing out there, I'd be interested in what you guys think. I'm going to take a bet and say that more than 50% of this battery market is going to be AC coupled.
Especially when you've got lots of surplus solar and you're maybe not super stressed about a little bit of losses. Right. Waste not, want not philosophy. I mean, we could probably bang out on about this for quite a while, but I imagine Luke is wanting to bring our guest in pretty soon as well.
We got a guest. I forgot all about that. So
we do have a guest. I did want to make a quick mention, though. We've mentioned in the last couple of episodes that it's a season where lots of people are moving around companies, leaving roles, starting new roles. So we've seen Wayne Smith finish up at the SEC, Kane Thornton's finishing soon at the CEC. But one I saw online is one of the best guys and nicest guys in the industry is Matt Tibaldi from Trade Zone, has announced he's moving on after 7.5 years. 7.5 very successful years. He's achieved a lot in the time there. So hats off to you, Matt. We're excited to see where you end up.
Yeah, I saw that too. I was surprised and excited for him. Is he going into barbecuing? Is that what I saw online?
I saw a post.
Surely not.
Someone's joking there. That's the dream job, right?
Brisket at Tibaldi's house.
Just involves us eating steaks all day.
So our guest today is Brad Foletta, who's the managing owner and director of Solargain North East Victoria. He's there on the coalface as well as the battery scheme has launched. Welcome to the podcast, Brad.
Thanks, guys. Long-time listener, first-time caller. So thanks for having me on here. No, it's an absolute honour. I'm not worthy, but I'll take it. Thank you.
So how's the week been so far?
It has been, exactly as anticipated, as much as you want to prepare and get ready. Tuesday, it was hammered down. Us, like so many others, we had to start installing batteries last month. I held off as long as we could, but the workflow was very quiet for most of this year. So when you've got your own installers employed, can't just have them sweeping the warehouse floor every day. We've got to get them to do something.
Here. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So we started putting the batteries in, and then all of a sudden from Tuesday, had the guys going back to site, signing off the 4 that they could per day, and orchestrating that along with the inspectors has been full on this week.
Have you found much difficulty with, did you have a chunk of time booked out to go back to jobs, or are you trying to balance new jobs and going back?
Yeah, it was just always going to be part of it. Copping basically going back to site twice and losing more days. Like obviously these installs that could have just all happened in one day, and now we're losing days this week. But it was for the greater good of getting jobs done last week. Now we're back on top after a busy week, and we're booking jobs as normal from next week on.
We've mentioned some of the issues that installers have faced that we're seeing on online channels around adding modules and battery stacks and hitting some roadblocks where things weren't exactly clear. Have you come across any of them?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, from the first moment of this rebate announcement, I knew stock would be the biggest hurdle. So we started placing pre-orders the best we could. And then even if you from your experience, Luke, you're a forward order and purchase order with a date on it. We knew this from back in the Fronius Primo shortage days, that it doesn't necessarily guarantee your stock's there when you've put your date on, does it? So I couldn't just order up all this stock and expect on end of June or July 1st for it to be here. We had to make that call to start pre-purchasing stock and using all the cash flow we have to get it in, to sit on it in anticipation of this. But that was if the world was going to be, installs starting from July 1st. Obviously, we had the ability to start installing, as we touched on last month, but then you're not getting full payment from the customer and asking them to wait weeks or in some cases almost 2 months for some people before we're going to be able to come back and turn this on. And now we're sitting here waiting for STCs, which is, as we know, roughly 30% of these jobs. So that just stretches the cash flow limits as well. So that's been a balance between the stock. I would have loved to have just bought containers and containers, but it's just not possible. And then now cash flow, and we've got to sit back and see how long we've started putting our claims in. We've got the certificates of safety from this week, and we've got to wait and see how long it's going to take to get these battery STCs paid. Have you found customers to be pretty reasonable? I guess we for the most part, we've been pretty transparent, and so everyone sort of knew what was coming. Has that been the case for you guys too? Yeah, absolutely. We're clearly communicating the steps and what's involved. And that's what we did from the start with these customers, qualifying, are you happy for us to come out, install your battery? We do need our portion of payment there and then on that day. You're not holding us to ransom until it's turned on, signed off. Then after that, if the customer was happy with that, we proceeded. Only a very small portion. Didn't sound like they were going to be happy with that. So we just told them, okay, you can wait till July or maybe August if we don't have stock in July. But most people have been that keen to get in front of this, and the thought that, okay, I get it installed, that means that I'm first to get turned on in July, has really meant there's been no problems there.
But that hasn't been the case everywhere. In New South Wales, the rebate changed by thousands and thousands of dollars. So if you had your system installed and plonked on the ground and someone said, hey, you owe us another $4,000, from what I can judge online, there's people who have said, get stuff, doesn't make any sense, come get your gear, which obviously is horrific for the installer because now you've got to uninstall it as well.
Last night there was plenty of gossip floating around at the Solarjuice event about more than one company who'd been caught in that exact scenario where they'd actually installed a ton of SIG under the belief that it was going to be software locked, and made promises to customers about the availability of the New South Wales rebate, which also evaporated. So they got a double evaporation right in front of their eyes, which I would imagine most customers wouldn't be very happy with. I have heard the same thing. It's good to hear it from you too, Brad, but I have heard the same thing for a number of companies, that most customers have been pretty understanding and willing to wait and to be patient for their money. If you want that money.
Surely with that product, it's not totally unique. It would have happened with some other products as well. We can look into the data and see that the battery's got no time on it. Surely we can take it apart, put it back together, snap some photos. And I notice everyone went very quiet very quickly, which means no one stuck their hand up and said, oh, I've done 100 of these, because we don't want to get caught, right?
So you reckon there's going to be fudging of paperwork and submissions?
Absolutely. I mean, no one's kissing goodbye to $5,000, $10,000. Just not happening. Have you guys seen some of these really scary low quotes? Brad, have you guys been seeing some impossible offers or comparison quotes come past your desks?
Absolutely. It just boggles my brain why Luke, you called it out a couple of episodes ago on this podcast. Here's an opportunity for us to build some healthy margins back into not just retail, but wholesale spaces. And yet, boom, straight away, I've got customers sending me quotes here. What about this 26 kilowatt double something ESS and $8,000 or something ridiculous? I'm like, this is just get out of town. Does not make any sense. Why? It's just everyone's so G'd up on volume and ego of how big and how much I do. And no one wants to talk about a little thing called net profit. I don't get it, but we're not following down that track. We never have. It's always quality and customer service and having money in the job to come back to these sites. Like battery customers, if anyone out there has never done them, they're more demanding than your solar customer. Their expectations has always been higher. If there's a problem with their system, they want you there way quicker than a solar. And especially if that's a problem with any kind of if you've got blackout protection or some kind of battery backup system that's not working to their desire, you've got to get there quick. So we need to be keeping money in these in our jobs to go back and service our customers and have long-term relationships with our customers, which is what we've always done here. And unfortunately, we know that that's not going to be the case with so many of those sort of quotes we're seeing.
It's a bit scary, isn't it? I was in an event last week and we were looking at a room full of people who are very excited about July 1 landing a few days later. And I said, hands up, everyone who's really excited about having a fleet of battery owners to maintain and support.
Last time
and obviously there was not a single hand that went up, but you could see the wheels turning because some of them had done batteries and they went, hang on, yeah, those people have demands.
Last time I visited Brad, he had a Powerwall that had been taken off site, and I said, I really want to know the story. Share it with us, Brad.
That was more of a bad debtor. So that was a particular customer who her biggest complaint with her Tesla Powerwall 2 was that it didn't charge during a blackout with her three-phase inverter. We clearly told her about this. We wrote it into the quote notes that this is what happens when you've got an existing three-phase inverter. Long story short, she never paid us, and we fought it. And then eventually she decided she was going to go with another system that will charge in a blackout with three-phase, etc. So, we took her battery away. But that's a case of just how you can get it wrong. You've got to meet these battery customers' expectations. You've got to explain the intricacies around blackout protection. Every customer is just assuming, hey, I'm getting my battery, it works in a blackout. That's a conversation you've got to have. And it's actually the first question we ask is qualifying. Do you want blackout protection or not? It's not standard with every battery system. If you want it, and that's your main reason for this battery purchase, let's give you solutions that work well in a blackout versus solutions that don't have the blackout protection, so they're cheaper without that additional hardware of backup boxes and etc.
And then what do you want blackout protection to do for you? Like your example with the solar during a blackout, some people really don't care, and some people it's super important that they have their solar on in a blackout, and you got to know. And do you find, especially in a market like this where it's hyper competitive and there's lots of ads on Facebook and people are bombarded and they just want to make sure they're getting a good deal, do you find that customers will repeat back to you stuff that other people have said, like as if you said it? It's just there's so much information, they can't tell products apart anymore. It's just so confusing.
The way I see it, the solar market, residential in Australia, had matured. Like even if you've never had a solar system, you've been bombarded with cricketers telling you get a 6.6. So every customer knew 6.6 was just this default size. And you had to educate them on if they needed a bigger system. And they knew that a 6.6 starting from your 2,990, 3,990, whatever it is. So in their brain, they think to themselves, okay, well, maybe I'm happy to go with especially if they're regional, a local installer, and I get it. That's probably the cheapest gear out there. I'll spend a bit more. And then before you know it, they're spending maybe $6,000 instead of $3,000, but they're getting better gear. with batteries, the market just hasn't been bombarded with enough of that kind of information.
Yeah.
So they don't know what size battery they need or what is a standard size battery, and they don't know what the price point is. And unfortunately, one of our old-time friends who loved to send out a really nice, thick paper letter to any solar owner.
I wonder who.
Yeah, they have unfortunately sent out a recent letter bomb addressed to our local DNSP. So it says, "Dear AusNet, solar owner," which instantly confuses people thinking somehow it's from AusNet. And then it goes on to say that they have a subsidised battery now as low as $2,000, Now, I don't offer, even with this rebate, a battery even, barely even 3 times that cost, as our smallest. So I don't, that expectation now, people are walking in the door saying, okay, I've seen this letter and all right, the cheap guys do it for 2,000. Surely 3,000 or 4,000's get me something better. And I'm like, no, not from here.
No,
So
totally.
This is what we're up against, is the education around the batteries and the price point. Customers aren't sure. So again, after that first question of do you want battery blackout protection, is here's straight up a estimated price point. Let's talk. Matt Wilkins penned this Tesla equivalent units. It's basically a 13.5 kilowatt battery, and the 13.5 beautifully creates 125 battery SDCs. And if you're doing that at the $40, that's $5,000. So I'm saying, look, on your common battery add-on like a Tesla Powerwall, that's $5,000 rebate. The government is saying it's 30% off batteries, not free home battery rebate. It's 30% off. So you're taking what was a $16,000, $17,000, $18,000 job, and now it's an $11,000, $12,000, $13,000 job, depending on the job. And just qualifying the customer, if they want to add a decent battery size, this is their price point today. It's not $2,000, $3,000, $4,000.
Brad, that one of the ironic things is that we had the WA Energy Minister drop into the last episode for a 5-minute interview, and she said that we don't want companies to use this as an opportunity to gouge the market. And I sat there with a smile on my face, but I thought, oh, you don't know a market very well, Minister.
It's blood in the water.
Look, we've seen it before with these rebates. They don't know how the market will respond until they put it out there and put it to test. And we are seeing a classic example now. As previously mentioned, to sell a single, the 13.5 kilowatt size battery system was pretty much, for most moms and pops, the most you would get out of them, right? Sure, some people love to put up the picture of they managed to sell 5 or 6 or 7 to a mansion in Sydney, but not up here in the regional area. I've never been able to do anything like that. Long story short, that was the size of system that we typically put on houses, adding a battery. But this rebate went all the way up to 50 kilowatt hours. And I remember hearing, I think Bowen originally saying that we want to include small business and everything, and after consultation, upwards of 50 should be supported. The problem is, by allowing upwards of 50 and then putting the pressure on and saying this is a one-shot rebate, you get one stab at this, buddy, and you got to get the most out of it, has just all of a sudden created absolute greed. Karl, it would turn your stomach inside how big people are doing batteries that don't need it.
The funny part about it is that 13.5 is actually a really, really good number, as in that was just a great number. How they came up with that in the first place.
Yep.
It allows for some degradation. They can use most of it most of the time. It was a good number. And here we are. I see 50 kilowatt hours with a 5 kilowatt inverter, and you just face palm. 10 hours to charge it, 10 hours to discharge it. Never going to use it.
Well, here's my example. Monday after the election, I have an old customer. We did a 6 kilowatt system for him in 2019, and ever since, every year or so, he comes back at me, and ahhing about batteries. Never purchased. Got a quote, thought about it. Yeah, not ready. He walks in the day after the election, and he says, well, I want my battery. And I said, righto. And we look at his power bills. We look at his online monitoring we had access to. Yeah, look, 10 kilowatt hours would be perfect. He wants blackout protection. So that's where you've got to look at the reserve we're going to leave in the battery. So let's look at the 15 kilowatt hour battery stack. You'll use 10 out of a night. You'll have 5 up your sleeve, perfect size. He says, how much to do 30 kilowatt hour, to do another stack of 15? You don't need it, mate. But how much more? Well, you get another $5,000 or whatever dollars rebate, $5,500 rebate. So it's going to be X amount more. He says, let's go, let's do it. And I'm like, straight away, day one.
Look at that.
Uh-oh. I'll be honest, at first I was a little bit like, oh, yeah, we just made, more margin on the job, thinking this is great. And then afterwards I stopped and went, uh-oh, this is going to get out of hand. This battery rebate is going to get, not only stock is going to get used up straight away, way more than we ever expected, but the money. The money's not infinite. Where's it going to come from? And
for sure. And it's the last minute additions. I had it 3 times this week with my customers. Oh, let's just add on an extra module. Let's just add on an extra module. And I think one module, you sort of go, oh yeah, whatever. Like if I was happy with, my 15 kilowatt hour stack, I'm probably happy with a 20 kilowatt hour stack. It's not too far off. But I had a customer do it twice. Once the day before his install and once the first day of his install. And I was very stressed about that conversation because you want to do right by these people. You want to make sure that when they text you in a year's time to show you how self-sufficient they are, they're stoked and you're stoked, and your tech support team's not getting hammered by people who are saying, why doesn't my battery ever charge? Why don't I ever use this? What a waste of my money. And, it is hard not to get caught up in the thrill of it. I think you're right. Like you've got to find that line and stick to your principles, knowing that they'll be happier in the long run.
Well, it gets better. So the same customer, we've already installed him in June, right? We put the 2 stacks of 15 kilowatt hour battery on his wall. Great wall. With the 5139 clearance rules, you never get a wall like this. Where his switchboard inverter already was, about 4 meters of brick. I'm like, I never get this. So we've got the 2 stacks of battery.
It's almost Trump-esque, Brad. It's a wall. It's a great wall.
The most beautiful.
Someone built wall, double brick, everything. He comes back in the shop after we've installed the 2. We haven't turned them on yet. We're waiting for July 1st. And he says, I've looked at the wall. I've been staring at those 2 batteries. I want another stack. Give me. And the problem was he's maxed out. He's got the 6 kilowatt inverter, can only do the 30 kilowatt hour. It can only do 2 stacks. I said, to do that, I'm going to have to pull your inverter off and put a bigger inverter on or another inverter. Like, this is getting out of hand, buddy. You need 10 kilowatt hours a night. He said,
tell me he went ahead with that.
No, I said, I couldn't do it. I wouldn't even quote him. I said, mate, you just pump the brakes, buddy. Pump the brakes.
Yeah.
But this comes back to your last podcast and your meeting with your WA minister there, Luke. She talked about they didn't see it being fair to give so much to get federal money, state money. The 50 kilowatt hours generates around $18,000. When are they going to catch on and go, whoa, should every mom and pop be eligible to get $18,000? And when the money runs out and people missed out, is that fair?
I reckon this is a really interesting one. There's been a lot of people very nervous about the money running out. I'm less nervous, though, because it's connected to SDCs. It's a tradable commodity. If we blow out the 2.3 in 6 months, that's okay. We're just creating certificates. The government can trade the certificates. So I'm not so worried about the CapEx coming, because it's not CapEx coming out of the government's budget. So I think we'll be okay there. But we've seen this before, and I'd be really interested in your view, Brad, but when a rebate drops looks incredibly generous and solves a problem that everyone's been trying to solve forever, like we saw in the early days of PV rebates, you get people who come in like your mate with the brick wall, who just go, I'm nervous. I'm just nervous. I'm going to miss out on this opportunity to get my government money. And they're utterly focused on the government money. But if I'm not mistaken, those people come and go within the first month or so, right? And then you move out of that part of the distribution curve and you move into more regular people who are thinking a bit more rationally, and they're not just trying to grab the money because the money's there. I mean, there's always people who will do that, and I think the retailers who are less scrupulous are arguably the bigger problem than the consumers there, because they're jamming that opportunity down people's throat. But do you think they'll go away after a month or so and then we'll get into a more normal market?
There's obviously, there's those people who are probably opportunists, always waiting for these opportunities to pop up. They get straight onto it. The key to sales is sense of urgency, is it not? Like, that is what closes deals, is urgency. And every designer, salesman is always trying to create some urgency. And what we have with this rebate design is it is once per house. That's not how the PV works. As we know, you do a 6.6 now, claim some STCs, then we put another 6.6 and claim STCs, and we can keep doing that all the way to 100 kilowatt. But by saying this is one shot, you get one chance at this, is what is creating these mammoth battery systems. If they instead said, yeah, put 10 kilowatt hours now, get $3,700, and in a year's time, and you've learnt your battery and you feel like, okay, I want more, you can put another 10 kilowatt hours on and get, the STCs will drop by a small amount next year predicted, but it's $3,500, whatever it is. That would have slowed things down. But the key issue I see is it's one shot, and people are therefore gouging themselves for fear of one opportunity.
Hey, I'm going to boot Luke because the family's waiting outside the car, and I'm so I will.
Did you lock them out, Karl?
Hey, yeah.
He needs a soundproof booth,
All right, Karl, give us your big sign off. Any last comments?
There are lots of good people out there in the solar industry who are scratching their heads and still thinking, why are we doing this? I guess it'll all work out in the end and we'll figure it out.
All right, Brad. So normally we jump in and give a background on our guest. I'm really curious about how did you get to be in the solar industry and some of the relevant things that got you there?
Honestly, at this times, I just feel like just another solar retailer. So I haven't got the most amazing story, I guess, but it's not too bad. I started off as, I'll go back to, I was originally a marine engineer working on ships. Did that for a number of years, lived down in Tassie, met my wife, and I was there working FIFO in the oil and gas industry off WA, working on those huge projects like the Chevron's Gorgon project and Prelude projects off Darwin, those massive gas fields. And here I was sitting out there on these ships in that industry. But as many as you know of my cousin Bryn, being FIFO, you get a lot of time off, and it just so worked out that as far back as 2009, I had some time off, and he was doing a bunch of solar installs in Western Victoria and needed some help. So I went out there and got my first taste of what solar is. And here I was on the roof putting these little 6-panel 1 kilowatt PFIT jobs in, and it all doing 3 jobs a day and 500 kilometers a drive. It was funny as it seemed really cruisy and a lot of fun. So that was my first little taste of solar. Kept chuffing away in this FIFO world, trying to, earn a buck. And I soon realised that, I wanted to be a small business owner. I wanted business ownership, and I sort of knew that solar would always be my get out of jail for, working that FIFO offshore sort of life. So here I was 29 years old. It was 16. I was about to get married. We were going to start a family, and I needed to do something. So spoke to Bryn, and he gave us this opportunity to come and join him in Wangaratta. He'd started up this business here in Wangaratta in 2014. It was one of the first Solargain dealerships, outside of family. So we're running under a Solargain dealership model, and he taught me a lot. We sort of worked together here. I bought in the business, become director, and spent sort of 2017, 2018 learning from him. And then 2019, he went off and opened up more dealerships. We also opened up together a dealership in Echuca, not far from here, with our business partner there, Lance. And I've been sort of running Wangaratta Solargain dealership ever since. So we're a team of about 16 here, both doing the whole deal, the sales and installation, as we're also electrical contracting business. So got a crew of 9 apprentices and sparkies doing the installs, and then there's 7 or so of us in the office and in sales and management.
How big is your service area? You're based in Northern Victoria. How far out do you service from Wang?
In regional areas, and you just want to do solar, and especially when this started off in 2014, we were just after that PFIT sort of craze. So in order to get enough business to support 2 install crews full time, we had to reach out, and we do a radius of roughly 150 kilometres. So that encompasses all the way almost down to Seymour, across Shepparton, up into New South Wales, and then all the way, the Victorian High Country with Mount Beauty and Bright and all that as well, and then down Mansfield and down in around Lake Eildon. So we do plenty of driving, plenty of miles, and especially we run this system of site visit is effectively mandatory. So we're on the road. Our designers are on the road doing a lot of Ks, but do the miles to get the smiles, and we
that's a good one.
We live by that one, and we and that goes so far in regional areas as a point of difference to go out to site and the
face to face. Yeah,
that's it. And we've got so much. We learnt so early on with the voltage rise issues, and before VoltVar and all these and AS4777 fixing it up a bit. We're having massive high grid voltage issues and inverters shutting down non-stop. And if you haven't done, say, your voltage rise calculation correctly and worked that out, you haven't got a foot to stand on. So we soon learnt that, we need to go check all those things is critical. And so often we found that, all right, look, you can't put the solar system on your shed, even though you want to, because the cable can't support it. And if we didn't go to site, that would just lead to so many on-the-day discussions with customers. And we've always gone to site, given a fixed price quote with no asterisks, there's no on the day you might be slugged for the switchboard works or anything. And then we deliver something that they were sold, and the customer satisfaction was there.
That's a lot of cups of tea and scones, mate.
For sure. And I used to be, that was me for years. I was doing so many of those site visits and driving around. If you don't accept that offer for that coffee, it is, whoa, things are getting hard from there on. So,
for sure. You've got to be pinging off the walls because you've got no other choice, right?
Absolutely. A lot of coffees and knowing where the public toilets are. And then managing your time, because you can get caught up. Like my number one rule was you don't just rock up and talk about solar. And I look for something of their interest to talk about. It might be motorbikes sitting in the garage. So start talking about the motorbikes, break the ice, build trust, you got to be likable. And all of a sudden, you look at the clock and you might have had 4 or 5 of these visits booked, and you've still got, it's 100 kilometres to the next place you're going to, and it's already, time to be at their place. So, yeah, time management's pretty full on those days as well.
How do you find it at the moment? Like, I mean, the sheer amount of inquiry that businesses are getting at the moment is barely manageable. How are you guys handling it?
It's a pleasant change after what was since Christmas so quiet. And,
for sure, yeah.
Scratching around, looking for leads. Now there's plenty of leads, but a lot of it is our database. We've been in business here now 11 years, got couple of thousand customers, so they're the first port of call. We've obviously contacted them through EDM, and they're coming back to us. So we've got the photos of their existing site. We're able to maybe sometimes at least get a quote out to them without having to get the site. We do then like to, because we already know the site, we got photos, we know the switchboard, we know everything. So that's been a help. But yeah, definitely. Managing that at the moment, we're on the road a lot and a lot of phone calls. It's just all going good, but I love that. I just love time goes quicker, right? And everything. Everyone's happier when they're busy, for sure.
A testament to what you've done there. I mean, we're the same. Where it makes it so much easier when you know what you're working with, existing customers versus somebody who if you haven't been there, exactly like you said, you kind of just got to hardball them with a rough cost to qualify if they even want to keep talking to you, and versus your customers, at least you know exactly, generally speaking, exactly what you need to do in the meter box. Is just figuring out where this bloody battery is going to go.
Exactly. And it's, we've got a great team here, and, we've always called our sales team designers. And if they aren't, I've got either qualified A grades who've got off the tools, like Kyle, who's on design, or we've put our other guys who have got a technical background, like Blake and Gareth, and they've also done we've put them through the design courses. We've taught them in-house. Everything
nice.
around that. It's just so important to us, they've learned how to look at a switchboard and realise if there's extras required there. And then we had to quickly redevelop our quote calcs to suit this battery rebate, because we're finding new battery combinations that we'd never done before. There was, and we need more solutions. We've had to take on some new products to meet the requirements of our network here, as far as inverter limits. So adding a battery in AusNet to a customer who's already got, let's say, the old Franius 8.2, and you were touching on it earlier, they don't want to get rid of this Franius Primo 8.2 snap inverter. It's not a hybrid. They want to add a battery, but they're single phase. We're limited to 10 kilowatts of solar hybrid. Doesn't matter. So it doesn't matter if you're AC coupling a hybrid inverter like an iStore, a Gen24, a SunGrow, any of these string hybrid inverters that can be AC coupled with. That's going to take us over the 10. We can only add a battery-only inverter like what the Powerwall 2 was. And then when we ran out of Powerwall 2 a few weeks ago and we thought, okay, we'll use the Powerwall 3s and just AC couple them and set them as a 5 kilowatt. No, don't. It's a hybrid, the Powerwall 3. It takes the site over 10.
Which is a bit strange, because whether the inverter is all-in-one or the inverter is separate, if it's an AC inverter or AC coupled battery, then it should be irrelevant, right?
It should be, but it's not how our network sees it. And we also have some big requirements to, if we're leaving a legacy site, so we with the CCIP Victorian backstop rules, under AusNet, they were the longest to allow legacy inverters to remain. They were pushing back on that, and I believe it took some strong minister rewritten orders to clarify that the legacy inverter can stay. And AusNet decided that if you're going to keep it, we need you to basically pay a $400 manual technical assessment fee. You need to provide a single line diagram of exactly the site setup. We need photos of the existing inverter and how that's wired into the switchboard with the escutcheon removed. We're going to want photos of where you've placed your CTs after it's installed. Like they've gone.
And where the installer scratched themselves as well, probably on the day.
Exactly. Yeah. They've gone full on with it, which we don't mind. We're technical and we can roll with that punches. But then if it's a best style battery that has no hybrid ability, no panel input, they allow that to be added on. So there's just been things like this it's probably the timing as well with CCIP and backstop, and now there's batteries that has really thrown us out.
It's so interesting because here in SA, if you AC couple a Tesla Powerwall, it's not counting towards your inverter capacity. I mean, our rules are a bit different, but like a single phase site, you could have 10 kilowatts worth of inverter capacity, and that would be separate to an AC coupled battery. So the fact that it's such a double standard for the different, DNSPs, and I'm sure if you were a few streets over or whatever with one of the other DNSPs in Vic, the rules would be totally different. How frustrating.
All right, Brad, so you are a businessman, you are a family man, and I'm just curious about how you unwind or how you find balance.
The easiest answer is obviously alcohol, isn't it? Which is just too easy, but that's not the answer, is it? So we can all enjoy a beer, but at the end of the day, I just learned to manage to switch off. And, it's so full on. The day goes by, so much problems. There's, everything's going on. But as soon as I get home, walk in the door, see my kids, see my wife, I switch off. I don't take phone calls from then on and, spend time with them and talk about their day. And all of a sudden, there's no thought of the business, the solar. I do that on the weekends too. We've never worked Saturdays or Sundays. It's just like, let's just have family time and switch off. Though once the kids are asleep and everything, I like to look at the lighter side of the industry. I think if we didn't laugh, we'd cry in solar. We need to have a laugh and, to get on Facebook, to get on the groups, Kempy and all the characters of this industry and taking the piss out of it, the satire. I love that. If you think you're the only one doing it tough or, you can get on there, and I just love people who just aren't big ego, are happy to take the piss out of themselves, and they're dealing with the same problem you are, but they're just open about it. They're not hiding it. Like, we've all got challenges, and I love that. So late at night, I'll be on the socials. I'll be on our, we've got the Snapchat group, and having a yarn with some other people in the similar situations, and that's what unwinds me, definitely.
Very good. So Brad Foletta from Solargain North East Victoria, it's been great to have you on. Before we wrap it up, we're just going to go around for last thoughts, and we'll start with you, Jess.
Yeah, I'm really excited for the Smart Energy Conference Adelaide edition in a couple of weeks' time, 22nd of July at the Convention Centre. I'm going to be talking on a panel. There's lots of really cool bits and bobs going on. So get down. Now's obviously the time to be leaning on each other, finding out what people are getting right so we can all learn from each other and get through it together.
Yeah, what are you speaking about?
I'm speaking about electrification. I'm going to try and focus up on people using the term future-proofing, because I think it's a bit of a funny thing that people throw around, but I just want to dig into what that even means and maybe how we can use it more functionally.
Jess MacPherson, voice of the industry. What is it, Nigel? Jess of the TikToks. Last thoughts, Nigel?
Two things. Firstly, I just want to highlight, especially for the Victorian listeners, the Solar Vic notice to market that came out. It's 60 pages long. There are some material changes there. It's really worth digging into that detail and making sure that you understand it. It doesn't launch till September 1st, but don't put it off. Get it out. Challenge out to Brad Foletta to make it enjoyable and fun for late night Facebook readers. But get your head around that. And secondly, the best quote of the night, actually, from last night's event that I was at, John D., who founded Planet Ark many, many years ago, was the MC for the night. And he talked about the history that he's had over sort of the 40 years of trying to encourage the uptake of renewables and other things. And he reminded everyone again and again and again that all of us in this industry stand on the shoulders of giants. And there are so many people out there doing so many wonderful things and collectively have laid the foundation work for everything that we get to do today. And it was a great acknowledgement of the people that came before all of us who really did the hard yards. And, I bang on about the old days and the history a little bit, but it provides you with context for why things are the way they are. And when they don't make sense sometimes, a little bit of history and a little bit of context helps you understand why that stupid rule is in place and can help you make sense of it. So here's to all the giants whose shoulders we stand upon.
And last thoughts, Brad?
Yeah, I just want to give a Nigel-esque shout out, if I can, to my local federal member of Parliament, Helen Haynes. She actually tabled what is this cheaper home batteries bill in February 2022. So I've found it. She gave me a copy of it. I've got it here. She made a speech to the House of Representatives, 14th of February 22, called the cheaper home batteries bill. So she came to me after that and spoke about how she reckons we should get batteries added to the ESRES, and that's effectively what's been later created. And so not all credit to her, of course, but she had that concept. I remember at the time thinking, yeah, right, like we need and we want a federal battery rebate. I wasn't sure whether adding to ESRES was the right thing to do, only because I was imagining that the STCs would have to be paid for by the coal generators and whatnot. And that's what was the most pleasant surprise of when Bowen announced it, was that it was getting paid by the government. And then it all made sense to me. And I said, this is a fantastic idea. So we're all happy there. And secondly, on that Sunday morning of the announcement, Chris Bowen jumped on a special Zoom meeting with the Smart Energy Council members. I jumped into that. And everything he said that morning has pretty much rang true and allowed us to be best prepared. And so much of what the issues I've seen people facing, unfortunately, and the questions that keep getting repeatedly asked, I'm like, those answers have already come through. So I encourage everyone to, when we have these huge rebate changes, it happened as well with Solar Victoria back 2018, is get ahead of it, join these kind of groups and get the facts from the get-go, and then you won't find yourself in so much trouble later on.
Well said, Brad. Thanks again for coming on. And thanks to you for listening. Please remember to like, subscribe, and share, and we'll catch you next time.